Ground sleep.
But she was asking me where's that she pulled that. I'm not from here. I don't know how to get there. Let's do this shit. I'm gonna learn something.
We left last time. We're talking about this test, getting you ready for this test. And we looked at, of course, we completed the research stuff. Are there any questions on the research stuff? Last chance on the research stuff. Everybody good with that? Feel comfortable with all that research? The null hypotheses, independent variable, all that kind of stuff like that. Any questions with that? Right? Okay, then we went to the learning stuff. And, again, classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and that kind of a thing. Gang, somebody, what is spontaneous recovery?
After extinction, it just popped right back up.
If, with a reintroduction of the...
Conditioned stimulus.
With the conditioned stimulus. That kind of a thing like that, spontaneous recovery. What did we talk about? What did that have to do with AA?
Triggers.
Stay away from your people in places and
Old
faces.
playgrounds and playmates, that kind of
okay.
a thing like that. They probably didn't know what they were talking about as far as learning theory with that, but the wisdom of that. Spontaneous recovery. Hey gang, which of the 4 kinds of reinforcement, most powerful, of the 5 actually, but which of the kinds of reinforcement most powerful in understanding self-destructive behavior? That kind of a thing. Negative reinforcement, the power of negative reinforcement with that kind of stuff. Pardon me?
How are there 5?
Well, I meant that there's 5 schedules. I meant there are 4 kinds of reinforcement. So yes, negative reinforcement. Speaking of the 5 schedules of reinforcement, which is the most powerful?
Variable ratio.
Variable ratio. Everybody cool with that? And then when we combine variable ratio, variable ratio with negative reinforcement, we have the seduction of addiction. Do you see what I'm saying with that kind of stuff, you guys? Once again, understanding, be able to identify unconditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, conditioned response, all those kinds of things like that. Any questions with any of that stuff? You'll be given scenarios and have to identify those kinds of things. Hey, of the approaches, we talked about 5 major approaches. Know those 5 major approaches. Hey, if I say that I understand behavior via a person's thinking, problems stem from faulty thinking, which approach am I talking about?
Cognitive, but I don't think that's the answer.
Again, pardon me?
Say
somebody. The cognitive approach.
Oh.
The cognitive approach. Remember, cognition, thinking, information processing, concept formation, problem solving at the mental level, that kind of stuff like that. The cognitive approach.
Hold on, you said there's 5 of them. I've only got 3.
Well, we got 5. We'll go over all 5 right now. We've got 5 numbers. Hey, if I understand behavior via behavior is just another function of the body. Hey, psychology is just another physiological process. Hey, psychological problems are just another disease. Which approach am I talking about?
Classical?
Say it again. Oh, operant.
No.
That's behavior.
Again,
Oh, I thought you said
the
behavior.
stuff of psychology is just another
Right.
physiological event. And psychological problems are just another disease. Which approach? The biological approach.
Oh, see, I don't have
The
I don't have
biological
that.
approach. And again, schizophrenia is a disease. Schizophrenia is a disease. And we're not going to hug, happy talk, sing kumbaya, somebody out of schizophrenia. They need a medical, a biological treatment kind of a thing. We talked about that. And again, that's fine. Hey, real depression. The disease of depression is a disease. You're not going to hug, happy talk that person out of that. They're going to need the best we have. Boy, I wish we had better. They're going to need the best we have in terms of medicine and things like that. However,
that's the organic.
Organic, yes.
Organic.
The organic approach. The organic approach, that biological approach. Organic would be that, yes. However, the problem is, not all of these psychological problems, the afflictions of daily living, are necessarily a disease. And a good example of that, the personality disorders. They're not a disease like schizophrenia. or the real disease of depression or bipolar or something like that. There are more functional disorders. And remember that that's why we need these other approaches. I mean, the disease, the biological approach, yes, there's a body problem. Schizophrenia is a disease. You don't get schizophrenia because you were called a poopy dog when you were little. It's a disease, and it needs that biological approach. But what about those things that aren't necessarily a disease like that? How do we explain, how do we understand that? That's what those other approaches are. Once again, the cognitive approach would suggest that, well, it's faulty thinking, and it's negative thinking. And boy, are we going to get into that when we get into the cognitive restructuring, then kind of counseling for our clients. Yes, sir?
Is this where you're talking about the organic and the...
Well, this is organic, functional. Yeah, that's going to play a role in that. Organic would be disease. Functional was what?
Learned
Learned in kinds of stuff like that. Yes, and a lot of these. So how do we explain that? If it's not a disease like we think of disease, well, then it's functional. And how do we explain that? Well, that's what those other approaches are for. Like I said, just again, the cognitive. Hey, we're interested in childhood development, and we're interested in, hey, the fact is we believe that your problem stems from unresolved childhood conflict. Which approach would that be? Which approach would that be? Who are we talking about here?
Is it a person?
Well,
Is that
the
what we're
approach
talking
would be the what?
Operant?
Not operant.
Class.
Once again, we're interested. We see you going through stages of development, and we believe that your problem stems from unresolved childhood conflict. What would that be? Well, development, and which approach? Siggy baby, Sigmund Freud, the psychoanalytic approach.
Okay, so we're
Remember the
okay.
psychoanalytic approach.
That's what I was looking for right there.
That
Yeah.
psychoanalytic approach would be. So what do we have now? We got the biological approach for the diseases. All right, that's cool. But how about for those non-diseases? We got the cognitive approach. We have the psychoanalytic approach. Hey, I believe your problem is a matter of learning, classical operant conditioning, that kind of a thing. What approach am I talking about?
A learning theory?
The learning theory, the behavioral approach. Behaviorism, the behavioral approach. And then, hey, I think your problem is that you have incongruence, and so you have a blockage of your movement towards self-actualization. Which approach am I talking about?
Well, that was Maslow with his self-actualization.
You have a problem with incongruence, and the reason why you're feeling bad, mad, sad, heavy is because of a blockage of your movement towards self-actualization. What would that be? Which approach? The humanistic approach.
I don't
The
know.
humanistic approach.
Did we talk about this?
Yeah, Maslow and those. Remember
Yes.
Maslow and the hierarchy of needs?
Uh-huh.
Hey, we talked about, remember, speaking of that hierarchy of needs, gang, what was the bottom rung? What was that bottom rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Well, it just
And
passed.
we talked about this in terms of basically prioritizing treatment.
It's like physical needs, like safety.
Basically, well, first of all, physiological needs. In other words, that the body's working right. The first rung is basic physiological needs. Is that the body's working right, that you're healthy. And then what was that second level?
Safety.
In other words, the first level, your body's got to be working right in the first place. The second level, your body may be working right, but you also still don't want to become tiger lunch. You see what I'm saying? Physiological, and then safety. And then what was the very top of that?
Self-actualization.
Self-actualization. And that is, again, that ultimate goal, the basic motivation for the humanistic approach. Self-actualization. And if something's blocking our movement towards self-actualization, that's going to make us feel bad. That's how they would explain psychological distress, things like that. Does that make sense? And again, what's going to make us? That basic humanistic idea that we're born with this basic need for unconditional positive regard. That humanistic approach. We're born with this basic need for unconditional positive regard. The problem is that we meet a world, kind of like with Freud's world, We meet a world of conditional regard. And I had better learn who to be, how to be, what I need to be in my world to get the good stuff, to get the acceptance, the kudos, the love. And what was this? If who I become, to get the good stuff, if who I become starts to clash with the humanist inside me, that's going to result in incongruence. Remember that incongruence thing. And that incongruence is going to block my movement towards self-actualization. That's how they would see. And so what are they going to do? Their kind of a therapy is going to be what? They're going to want to work on helping you resolve that incongruence so that you can move on in your quest for self-actualization. That kind of a thing. Remember those terms, that idea, that humanistic approach. And a lot of these, a lot of the popular right now, pardon me, AOD, drug and alcohol counseling approaches, will encompass, and we're going to see that when we get into actual counseling stuff. That encompasses that humanistic approach. You guys at some point are going to meet Carl Rogers on film, and you're going to see Carl Rogers doing humanistic counseling, or what they call their client-centered approach. That kind of a thing. Like you're going to watch Carl Rogers doing his kind of counseling, humanistic counseling with that stuff. Now, I'm basically more of a cognitive behaviorist. But I'll tell you what, humanistic counseling, if you don't establish that empathy bond, that true, again, good, healthy, empathy bond, clinical relationship with that person in the first place, that humanistic approach. If you don't establish that empathy bond with that client in the first place, I don't care how good you are at any other approach, it's not going to work as good as if you had established that bond. Does that make sense? And so this is all very important, you understand.
So one work with the other. You have to have the, we understand about, you have to have that empathy bond. But if my thing is the same as yours, if you're working on the cognition and thinking of the individual that you're dealing with and how to deal with their behaviors. So you're saying you work humanistic and?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Because if you don't, I don't care how good you are at cognitive or any other approach, if you don't have that bond with that client to start with, it's not going to be as effective or helpful.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So have that respect for that humanistic approach. You know, and a lot of people, I mean, cognitive versus humanistic are two very different approaches. And back in grad school, we cognitive people used to call the humanistic people a bunch of fuzzy happy talkers. And they used to call us the bully therapists. They're two very different approaches. But I'm telling you right now, understand this humanistic kind of massive. Understand where that client is with this stuff. Because you've got to meet that person where they're at with that. That's why we don't start arguing with that client from the very start about you're here for the wrong reason or those kinds of things like that. We meet that client where they are. We establish that bond with that client, that empathy bond. What is, oh, by the way, empathy? What is empathy? Somebody, what is empathy?
To feel
I don't understand.
and
I
understand
can
the
truly
person.
understand you. Sympathy is, I'm sorry for you. Empathy is, I truly understand you. That client needs to believe that. They need to. What was that? What was that phrase I said? The client needs to what?
Feel felt.
Feel felt. They need to feel felt. That I truly, you really believe I truly do want to and am seeking to, and I do understand you with this. Because if that client doesn't feel that, like I said, once again, I don't care how good you are at some other approach or strategy or anything else, it's not going to work quite as well. And so you've got to establish that bond, that humanistic approach kind of a thing. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And so understanding these 5 approaches. And yeah, you know, the good counselor, they understand and they probably use all of those different approaches at one time or another. In the way where they tailor their approach, what they're doing right now, to the here and now needs of the client. Does that make sense? What may be a good approach? I'm a cognitive behaviorist. But, well, I've already, what did I say about the past? Speaking of process to the product, what did we say about the past?
It matters.
Why? Why does that past matter? That's because to know the past, I'm not going to sit in the past for the next 6 months crying about what happened to you when you were 3. That's not going to do anybody any good. But I need to know that past because that's going to help me what? To know the now, to know who this person is today. Where did they come from? How did they get there? That kind of stuff like that. Does that stuff make sense, you guys? Remember all this stuff we've talked about with that. Hey, if I start to talk about things like the personal fable, object permanence, if I talk about things like sensory motor stage, pre-operations stage, who am I talking about?
Piaget.
Say it.
Piaget.
Piaget. Don't forget, know Piaget, know those stages. And what Piaget was, and what were a couple of very important things I talked about with that. And again, gang, you know what? As I think back in my several weeks doing this, I don't remember ever talking to a client specifically about Piaget. But I have used Piaget every time I'm with a person, a client. Does that make sense? What was one of the ways we understand Piaget? Remember that whole thing about what? Hey, what was, somebody tell me, what's self-efficacy?
Self-esteem.
Whether or not you think you can.
The part of the self-esteem, the I think I can. How important that is. Again, gang, you think about this. That client right now waking up, probably a nurse checking their vitals and things like that. And right after that nurse is done, here comes the counselor, going to try and talk them into going into treatment. Instead of having to lay here sicker than hell in this detox bed again tomorrow. And what did we say about self-efficacy? If you really, that client, they've been there. I went to your stupid meeting. I read that book. I went to this, I was at Chestnut. I was at, and everything else. If that person really doesn't believe he or she can do that, how willing are they going to be to try to do that again? Does that make sense? Working on that self-efficacy. Speaking of self-efficacy, what was the other thing?
Outcome efficacy.
What was that?
Well, I can do it, but the world's going to screw me anyway.
I can do that. I can do your treatment. I can do this. But it doesn't matter because everything ends up shoved up my ass anyway. And so why try? Yeah. Do you guys see how important outcome efficacy is? And you're going to meet that person. And so don't just assess self-efficacy, you guys. Also assess outcome efficacy. Also, because again, yeah, I can do it. Oh, they got lots of confidence. Oh, they seem motivated. And this and that. But you got to listen for that outcome efficacy also. Because I can do this. I can do this easy. But it doesn't matter. Because nothing works out for me anyway. And so I'll finish your stupid program, but life will still turn on me and you see what I'm saying? That kind of a thing like that. So listen for both of those. With Piaget, what was another very important story we talked about with Piaget? How did it go?
Meet the person where they're at.
Well,
Was that with Piaget?
that was
No.
another thing. What was that? Yes. We know those Piaget's stages.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that, I've got a 26-year-old adult who, hey, I studied Piaget in college, and according to Piaget, they're in formal operations. They're an adult thinker. And so I'm talking to them like they're an adult, and they're not getting it. They don't seem to be tracking along. They don't seem to... And so then I know what that is, don't I? This adult doesn't want to get better. They're full of shit. They're fucking with me, and they're just playing. That's not the case, maybe. Probably what the problem is what?
It comes down to their level.
Pardon me?
It comes down to their level.
In other words, maybe they're not in formal operation. You thought they were in because the book said so. The book said they're in formal operation, but they're not. And maybe you need to get, where are they? Maybe they're somewhere in concrete operations still, or something like that. And instead of getting mad at the client, what you need to do is change your approach and change how you're communicating with that client. You notice, guys, that everything we talk about, one way or another, it's not just, I'm not going to waste time with Piaget if there wasn't a reason to talk about Piaget. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, that's nice, Piaget thing. That's what you get in intro psychology. That's what you get in developmental psychology. And yeah, I got to memorize Piaget for the damn test or something. But you notice that every single thing we talk about in this class, somehow or another, we take it back to what does this mean for you as a counselor? What does this mean in terms of how, what way, why you're going to do what you're going to do with that client, things like that? What does this got to do with how you're going to better understand that client? Everything we talk about with that. Hey, there was another PJ thing. What was that other PJ thing we talked about?
Good things happen to good little.
And what was that? Somewhere in concrete operations. And again, these kids, they're learning the rules of the world, how the world works. Hey, mommy and daddy windmills, baby windmills. And then what was another? Kids learn pretty early, don't they? What was that? The whole idea. Good things happen to good little boys and girls. Bad things happen to bad little boys and girls. That's the way the world works. And now bad things are happening to me. And this kid encountering maybe some ones. You know, oh, by the way, when I say ones, twos, threes, fours, I don't even have to walk to the board anymore, do I? Everybody knows what that stuff is, right?
We're conditioned.
And the hedonic calculus and things. And this kid's encountering some bad stuff, some really bad stuff in his or her life. Let me see, how does it work? Good things happen to good little boys and girls. Bad things happen to bad little boys and girls. Something bad is happening to me, therefore I am a
Bad little boy or girl.
bad little boy or girl. And gang, does that serve as a frame of reference for this kid that can last quite a while?
Yes.
And again, here we go. And now that first day of kindergarten or first grade or whatever, and all the other kids, yeah, they're running around, kicking the dust and making new best friends and stuff like that. And here this kid is over here. How come nobody wants to play with me? Well, I know why, because I'm a bad little. You see what I'm saying? Hey, how come all the other kids are getting stars on their spelling words? I'm not getting a star on my spelling words. How come? Well, I'm a bad, you see what I'm saying? Hey, how come? Here it is, 6th grade, 7th grade. Hey, there's Johnny and Susie out there in the dance, in the middle of the cafeteria floor, the gym floor, and they're having fun. How come nobody wants to dance with me? Well, you see what I'm saying with this stuff, you guys? And gang, that's self-esteem and things. How that's working for that person. Remember, and again, how could you like such a how does this feel good that you hate yourself so much? That you say these awful things about yourself? And how can that feel good in any way? And it probably doesn't feel good in any way for that person.
It's how they cope with life.
But it's, what did we say about that?
Any explanation is better than no explanation.
Any explanation is better than no explanation. And you've got to understand that with that client, you guys. And again, counselors, oh, you've got to stop thinking that way about yourself. Oh, you've got to stop saying those things about yourself. Oh, you're right. You're probably right. I'm going to have to do that. You've got to remember, though, you guys, just because you had that interaction that day with that client and the client even agreed with you, what happens? The very next time you see that client, they're talking that way about themselves, and now you're all pissed off. I thought we talked about this. Didn't we talk about this? We thought you said you were going to take. You don't want to. Maybe you don't. Maybe you like feeling miserable. You think you like feeling. I will hunt you down.
And then one of your descriptions that you was talking about self-efficacy and the outcome.
That's what I'm talking about.
Then you said learned helplessness.
Well, learned
If
helplessness.
they just learned like that they was.
And what do we say? The more we do it, the better we get. The better we get, the easier it is. The easier it is, the more we do it. That person's so good at that now. Just because you had that discussion and even agreed, yeah, I got to stop that, doesn't mean that that's going to magically make that go away. You've got to understand all this stuff, you guys. Oh, by the way, guess what we're doing in the second year DAC stuff right now? We're applying in group therapy and in psychotherapy approaches and stuff, we're applying everything. Every single thing we're talking about right now here is being applied in those therapy, doing group therapy and that kind of stuff like that. You need to know this stuff, your ability. Well, how does that go? All this stuff comes in. You process that with your fund of knowledge, your basic understanding of addiction in the first place, so that out goes that next best clinical response. Your ability to do that. You need to have this knowledge, you guys. I mean, I would never ask you to memorize the PDR. I would never expect somebody to memorize the entire DSM. That would be stupid. What a waste of time and energy that would be. That's what we got the book for, to look it up. But a lot of this stuff, this kind of stuff, you need to have this. You need to know this. Once again, there's that client and they got the blade at their neck. And could you wait 1 minute? I got to go look something up. No, that's not a good time to go have to look something up. You need to know this now. What are you going to do next? What's the next best right response? That you need to know this stuff, you guys. Do you understand what I'm saying? To be a good counselor. You know? And so, keeping that in mind, as we look at then, that cornerstone for that self-efficacy, for that self-esteem. Understanding learned helplessness. What was learned helplessness? How about, what was another big issue? Remember, we talked about then with the process to the product. We also talked about what? That whole high school experience. And it wasn't so much high school as what? Is the emergence of so many major issues for this kid. They're still in concrete operations, and all of a sudden, and again, what did we talk about? One day Johnny's voice is squeaky and Susie's t-shirt don't fit no more. And all this stuff about that. And then these kids who are forming these, and the school's not sponsoring it, but all of a sudden we have these social hierarchies, the cool kid, the this, the that, and everything else. And we talked about how important all that was. Gang, to this day, I don't care, and I work with more than just addiction stuff. I don't care what the problem is. I don't care who the person is. I don't care this. I don't care that. If I'm going to help somebody, I'm going to want to know a whole bunch about what happened in that person's life and how that affected that person and that period of time with all that stuff. You guys remember that whole story and everything? Hey, what we talked about? What? Self-efficacy. Yeah, we talked about learned helplessness. What was another major thing that is coming out of this that plays such a very important role in addiction, plays such a very important role in understanding hedonic calculus? What was that?
Cognitive dissonance.
Say it.
Resolution.
Cognitive dissonance resolution. And how these kids learn how to resolve the moral crises of their life way back then. How do I learn how to have my cake and eat it too? How do I learn how to justify and explain away behaviors and things like that? And gang, how? Once again, that period of time. And your client, of course, they're going to be full of all that stuff we counselors love to hate, all that resistance, denial, all those defense mechanisms. Where did this stuff come from? How did they get so damn good at this? They learned a lot of that way back. Does that make sense? And that kind of a thing. And so understanding cognitive dissonance resolution stuff, all those kinds of issues with that, you guys. Can you explain cognitive dissonance? Remember, what was another thing we said? This stuff. Yeah, you need to know this as a way to better know your client, understand what's going on with your client, so that you know what's the next best right thing to do. Who else needs to know this stuff?
The client.
The client. If only one day, one person, one time would have said, this is going to happen. Maybe that guy would have been there for that kid's 11th, 12th, and 13th birthday party. Does that make sense? Those kinds of things like that. You guys need to know this well, because cognitive dissonance. Clients are confused about this kind of stuff. Why do I do these things? I know they're wrong, but why do I this? Why do I that? Your ability to help. One of the biggest problems, one of the biggest don't understand it clients have is why they do some of this damn stupid stuff. I'm not a stupid person. I'm really not a bad person. Why am I doing so many stupid and bad things? Do you hear what I'm saying with that? And again, if you're not there with an answer for that person and help them understand this, you know what? On the surface, how it looks stupid and bad, let's take a look at why these kinds of things happen in the human experience. And teach that person about this stuff. Because if you don't know this and get it to that client so they can answer those questions, somebody else will. And they may not have good, accurate answers. As a matter of fact, they may have very toxic answers for this. Does that make sense? But once again, all right, now I got an answer. And don't forget, any explanation is better than no explanation. You see all this stuff all works with this stuff, you guys. That's why you need to know this stuff. And right now, we're talking about that process to the product stuff. Yes?
I know you're talking about it's good for a counselor to inform the client that it may happen. You know what I'm saying? That's not actually telling the client that a relapse is part of your recovery, is it?
Pardon me? No, I don't agree with that.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't
So
know, I think it's a mistake.
Just that council letting them know that it may happen, something may happen,
But
that
I'm
may trigger
not
you.
telling you, when I tell you this, I'm not telling you relapse is gonna happen. What I'm
Right.
telling you is, this is gonna happen, and why am I telling you this? So that you don't relapse.
Right.
When this does happen, you don't have to be all freaked out about it. If that guy, that very true story, Pepsi, 7-Up, oh shit, I'm thinking about beer.
I can relate to the
If
one that
only-
you had about the girl going just to go get some stuff for the grandma.
Yeah. If
I
only-
used to walk past
Yeah.
Troy, the Troy boy, I knew what that meant,
Yeah.
you know, and it did trigger something because that was something I used. but
That's what I'm talking about.
Nobody
And so,
told me that
when-
that would happen.
And when I talk about this isn't because I think relapse is this is to help so we don't have relapse.
Right.
Because this way, when that guy started to think about that beer, instead of freaking out, oh no, what a louse I am, I'm a terrible person after all, he goes, no, this is what me and my counselor talked about. This is
Right,
cool, I understand
okay.
what I'm saying. Hey, I'm fine, this is cool. Do you see the difference in that? Boy, that counselor really, they knew what they were talking about. I am thinking about that beer, but this doesn't mean I'm bad, doesn't mean this is, I'm cool. You see the difference in that, you guys? That's why. And so you need to know this. And so that means you need to know this well enough, not only that you can use it yourself to understand and work with your client, but you need to be able to teach a whole wide variety of different kinds of people this. And how you teach this to one person may be very different than you're going to teach the exact same stuff, but a very different way to another. Does that make sense? All that stuff, you guys. And that you have to have a versatile knowledge of this. This isn't just that asshole Celts making me memorize shit, damn it. No, every single thing we talk about in this classroom, every day, one way or another, has to do with how and why you're going to be a better counselor. Does that make sense? Every single thing. You ever notice that? I mean, why the hell would we need to understand PJ? Well, now you know why. In my entire career, I don't think I've ever mentioned Piaget per se to a client, but I use that all the time. See what I'm saying with this? Understanding this stuff and how we then become an agent of possible and at some point attainable and real change in that person's life. Does that make sense? That's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. And you guys wanting to know this, don't want to know this for the sake of a damn number on the top of a piece of paper. Want to know this for the sake of who?
The client?
Your client. The people whose lives you're going to screw up if you don't have this stuff. There are reasons why, you guys, there are damn good reasons why we think we're big shots at 18 to 20% success. Is that good?
No.
Is that good? Is anybody happy with that? There are real good reasons why we think we're big shots at that level. You guys, hearing this stuff, the things that, and again, what we're doing now is going to build and build and build. Like I said, your predecessors in the 200 level DAC right now, group therapy and things like that. All this stuff is coming into play. Everything. What are we doing right now? We're building foundation stuff here right now. You see what I'm saying? So we can build on top of that, the counseling approach, the group therapy approaches, and all those kinds of things later with that. Any questions with this stuff? Any other thoughts, questions with this? Again, do know those different approaches. Hey, what is pre-operation, concrete operation, formal operation?
Piaget.
A lot of these things are not just know the definition of stuff. You're going to hear a scenario. You're going to read a scenario. And then be able to glean out of that scenario meanings of things. Does that make sense? It's not going to be just a question, what is concrete operations? It's going to be a scenario. And then, which stage does it sound like this person's in? or something like that. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah.
It's not just memorize a bunch of definitions, you guys. It's have a good, fluid, working knowledge of this stuff. Have a good, fluid, working knowledge of this stuff. I'm looking for some specific things. What is the personal fable? What was that? Very important in understanding your client.
It's not gonna happen to me.
Not going to happen to me. I'm better than that. I'm different from that. And those kinds of things. That inability to imagine that this really would. That sense of center of the universe. That sense of uniqueness. Uniqueness, different from. Those kinds of things like that. Other people had better stay away completely from all alcohol, but I know that I'll be able to drink a beer once in a while and I'm going to be fine. The personal fable. Those kinds of things like that. Does that make sense?
That kind of runs into the concept of like terminal uniqueness, right?
Yeah. Yes. Hey, who was Freud, Erikson, Watson, Piaget? Some of those major names that we talked about.
The fathers of something.
Who was Freud?
He was the psychoanalytic guy,
Psychoanalytic. Watson?
behaviorist.
Who was Watson?
That's wrong.
That's good to know these major.
I think
Watson was behavioral
followed
approach.
behind Freud, but he didn't believe some of the.
Wasn't Watson?
Watson was what? Behavioral approach. Remember, Watson hated Freud.
Right.
We're going to be a science here. Who was Piaget, what we just talked about? Who was Erikson? Hey, instead of Freud's 5 stages of psychosexual development, we can talk about Erikson's
8 stages of developmental
8 stages of psychosocial development.
psychosocial.
Erikson's stages. And again, what was one of the most important differences between Erikson and Freud? And Erikson's used a lot. As a matter of fact, there's a good chance you'll run into Erikson questions on the state certification exam. And what was one of the major differences between Erikson and Freud?
He wasn't so sexual about everything.
It was more
Right.
social
He was more
than
social.
sexual. And then there was another major difference. What was that other major difference? Biggie. Freud's 5 stages versus Erikson's 8 stages. What was another big difference between the two? Erikson believed that development was a dynamic process that continued beyond just early adulthood. Freud stops at early adulthood.
I knew that.
Erikson goes on through the entire life. Generativity and those kinds of things like that. Do know the hierarchy of needs. Hey, what is assimilation accommodation? What is assimilation? Somebody tell me, what's assimilation?
That's like when everything gets kind of lumped together. Like if you've got 4 legs in your furry, you're clearly a dog, right?
New information fits your current, what was that thing called? Your current what? What did Piaget call that? Your fund of knowledge? What was that, you guys? Who's really glad I'm doing this right now?
Me.
You see what I'm saying with this stuff? And dang, you got to stay with this all the time. Stay with this all the time.
That's crazy
Your
to me.
current
She
what?
says
What
it.
was
I
that?
don't remember.
When new information comes into your what?
Hold on.
Schema.
Oh, I was.
Your schema.
Just throw your notes away.
When new information comes into your schema and fits. Yes, 4 legs, furry, and a tail is a dog. Yes, and that's a dog. Yes, that's a dog too. Boy, you're going to be a rocket science. But then, the kid runs up to the polar bear and hollering, doggy, 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 and somebody grabs him and says, get away from there. You're like, that's not a dog. You're trying to lose your hand. And that brain becomes confused. And it says, what the hell? First you told me 4 legs, furry, and a tail is a dog. Now you're saying it's not a dog. I'm confused. What is this? And Piaget called that what? Distinct vibration. And this idea of what? Now we have this dissonance, this conflict going on. We need to solve that. And at some point, that kid who realizes, I see what you're saying. 4 legs, furry, and a tail might be a dog, but it could be a kitty cat. or lions and tigers and bears, oh my. You see what I'm saying with that? Oh, I see. Other things can also be 4 legs, 4 and a tail. And what is that called? Not assimilation, but what? Accommodation. Accommodation. And accommodation is the fuel of cognitive development. Gang. Talked about from the very beginning. From the very beginning. Who remembers the McDonald's baby? And from the very beginning, the importance of this right here. Guys, 95% of psychology is right here. 95% of psychology is right here. What is that? That brain trying to understand this world in a way to know how to feel and be safe in this world. Does that make sense? Once again, Maslow's bottom too. I mean, if you're not safe, if you're not well, and if you're not safe, none of the other stuff matters anyway, does it? And so understanding that. Everything's about that. That whole Hedonic calculus is about what? No, once again, we don't ruin our lives for the feel-good fun of it. We're not that stupid. If we were that stupid, guys, we wouldn't be here today talking about it. Our species would have never survived that long. We've had ways to kill ourselves for a long time. You see what I'm saying? Alcohol's not something we just found in the 50s, and drugs are not something we found at Woodstock. We've been doing this for a long time. What was it? It was how we learn how to feel safe, make the bad stuff go away. How we learn how to feel safe from ourselves, the cognitive dissonance resolution. All that stuff put together. Everybody cool with that? Questions about this stuff? What is the id?
That was awesome.
I like that. That's what other.
Wasn't that the subconscious?
Isn't that the self?
The id.
The part you're born with, yourself.
That part you're born with, the horny little id monster. Freud's first personality, the part we're born with, the me.
Based on the pleasure.
Based on the what principle?
Pleasure
Based on the
principle.
what principle?
Pleasure.
The pleasure principle. And then that id that runs into what's the superego?
Moral.
The moral principle, the right and wrong. Guess what? You're not the only one here, kid. You got to wait your turn like everybody else and all that stuff. And they're clashing all the time. And out of that becomes the what? The ego. What's that? Based on the what? The reality principle. Knowing these different theories, understanding this stuff. Hey gang, mood is what?
What you think about yourself.
Mood is
What you think about yourself.
what you say about your feelings. Affect is what?
What other people see.
What other people see about that. We can talk about mood, affect, incongruence. What is that? Mood, affect, incongruence?
That one I said together.
No, it's when you feel like poopy water and everyone thinks you're happy.
In other words, I'm happy.
Or everyone thinks
Cry.
Yeah.
In other words, you say one thing, show another.
Mm.
I'm sad, laugh. I'm happy, cry. Mood, affect, incongruence. Mood, affect. Those kinds of things like that. Gang. Do know. Organic, functional. Do know organic. Some of this most recent stuff we've talked about. This is a pretty straightforward, easy. You know this stuff. You understand all this stuff that you need that we're going to carry into the second semester here right around the corner.
Did you
What is-
tell us how many questions are on it or no?
270.
You keep telling me that. Last time you said 275.
I'll say 250. right?
Here's the thing though, the more questions there are, the more I get wrong.
60.
I feel like you're right.
What?
I always get wrong.
Don't worry about the number of questions. Worry about knowing this stuff.
Do we know when we're taking this?
Pardon me?
Do we know when we're
Yeah,
taking
you do. You have it, but I'll announce it. I don't have that
Okay.
with me today, but
Okay.
it's
Oh,
finals
okay.
week. It's in your.
We'll
Gotcha.
find that out on the break.
Now, but I'll bring that into you.
Okay.
I'll bring that into you. I should have done that today, my bad. Hey gang, what is a hallucination? Simple, quick, easy. What's a hallucination?
Something that doesn't exist in reality.
It's a perception error.
A false perception. Hearing stuff, seeing stuff, feeling stuff, smelling stuff, tasting stuff, not there. Hey, what's the quick quiz? What's the most common?
Auditory.
They're hearing the voices.
Wasn't
They're
it?
hearing the voices. Okay. Hey, what's an illusion?
Something that's really there, but it becomes distorted.
And bizarre and weird. That can,
Clock on the wall.
the clock on the wall, there's really a clock up there, but by the time my sickness gets done with it, the hands of time are reaching out to take me to another dimension. That kind of a thing like that. What is a delusion? What is a delusion?
Thinking something that's,
Say it.
that's when you're thinking something that's not really.
False beliefs.
Yeah.
False beliefs. Hey, we talked about delusion. Gang, do you know that person, they get the damnedest, silliest idea in their head and there's no way of talking them out of it? Is that necessarily a delusion?
Somebody else work like that.
We see this with, we see this with prejudice.
That could be stubbornness, right?
Just play, do you know that person? They get the damnedest,
Or
silliest
both.
idea in their
That's
head.
annoying. They just want to get on your nerves.
Is that really a delusion? No. It's just, they get a silly ass idea in their head and they won't let it go. Yeah, stubborn like that. And gang, you see that with religion, politics,
Can that be learned?
prejudicial stuff.
Can that be learned?
That probably is, and it's probably modeled and guided. This is what this kid's heard all their life and things like that. And again, prejudicial stuff, stereotypical stuff, religion, politics, some of those kinds of things, you'll see these things in. Your ability, know the difference between just that, stubborn thinking versus delusion and things. You guys, knowing this, put that damn stupid label maker away. Remember we talked about that. Put that stupid label maker away. Hey gang, another thing with this. How about paranoid? Somebody tell me, what is paranoid?
They, them.
Yeah, them thinking
The
something.
they, them, the pseudo community. The what? Delusions of persecution. Hey, I'm doing an interview with a client, an intake interview, and I'm talking to the client. I'm asking them a lot of questions. And the client, what do you want to know that for? Who are you going to tell that to? And so I write my note. The client was paranoid throughout the course of the interview. Is that okay for me to do
No.
that?
No.
I am going to hunt myself down if I do that. You see what I'm saying? Don't you dare do that kind of stuff. Don't you dare do that kind of stuff. That person wasn't paranoid. They were concerned about who you're going to tell this shit to. Does that make them bad? Is that wrong?
No.
No, that's not wrong. Come on, knock it off, you guys, with that kind of stuff.
So it's really just trust issues, then, right?
That maybe, that could be. Don't forget that addiction survival persona. One of the things you learn real fast is you don't trust anybody a whole bunch, do you? You never know. You don't trust anybody, do you? That's part of how that person's learned how to survive right now. And just because they walk into a treatment center, now you're asking them all kinds of personal questions, they're going to trust you? Does that mean they're paranoid? No, that doesn't mean they're paranoid. Knock that kind of stuff off. That kind of a thing like that. Is everybody cool with that? Hey, gang, knowing and understanding. Hey, what the issues of schizophrenia, the mood disorders. Do you remember when we had the spectrum of the affective disorders, from unipolar depression to bipolar 1, bipolar 2, dysthymia, cyclothymia.
Those were the two that were like borderline, right? Those two.
Bipolar 1 was what?
It's
All
like
the way up.
really big ups and downs.
Bipolar 2 is this.
All right, now you just
Dysthymia was kind of
The
depressed.
borderline between one and then the borderline between.
Yeah, because let's say that this is normal right here.
Yeah.
Kind of bipolar.
The problem, what did we used to call this? Manic depression? Why did we change that? For this right here. When we called it manic depression, you had to go manic in order to be seen as cycling. How about this part? They're cycling also, but they never get to normal, let alone manic. But they're cycling also. They never got mood stabilizers because they didn't go manic. Okay, then let's change the name from or manic depression to bipolar 1, bipolar 2.
I have a question. I diagnosed myself bipolar 2 this semester, and I was informed by 2 different counselors that I was not.
No, you're not.
Well, you don't know me. But they were like, so what's hypomania? Because they said you had to have some hypomania
With what?
with the bipolar 2.
In other words, again, that you may sneak up here once in a while.
Up into
You may
normal?
sneak it right, but it's more like this right here. Bipolar 2 can get like this. It can a little bit there, but then it gets back down pretty quick.
Is bipolar 2 unipolar?
Pardon me?
No.
No, unipolar is
Just major depression.
always, one way, always depressed.
It's just always depressed.
So could poorly managed unipolar depression sometimes look like bipolar 2?
Yeah, yeah, and
'Cause
yeah,
that's what I was told I
and
had.
don't forget this. What is this right here? This is dysthymia. And what is this?
Cyclothymia.
Cyclothymia.
So the difference between whether or not needing meds.
It could be, yes. Do these people need meds? Probably not. If you work with it well.
Maybe a cycle.
Don't forget the very important issues of what? What was that state trait?
How can you be, hold on, how can you be kind of bipolar?
Kind of bipolar, right here. Once again, in other words, this person, they're kind of cycling. They're not clear down here. They're not clear up here.
So you're kind of an addict.
Well, no, this is kind of.
Haven't you
I don't
dated
say
some
that.
girls that
I
are kind of
don't say that.
bipolar? I
This
have.
person,
Just super
they're
moody?
they're moving around a lot.
I might be.
For up and down moves and things like that. But it's not
Might
really.
be tough.
It's not really where they're down here like this. They're not up here. They're just kind of flirting with normal, but they just, this is the person. They're in a good mood, then they're in a bad mood, then they're this, then they're that. But they're still, it's not like it becomes pathological to the extent that, once again, they're needing depression meds, lithium or something like that. They're just kind of like this.
I mean, like, you're just kind of a moody person.
Moodiness.
So but now you have a fun disorder. Aw,
Huh?
we can all fit in a disorder.
Yeah.
No, but I feel like depending on where you are at in that middle range, when you get tested, will put you. Like, and the wrong counselor. Like, they will take a regular depression or like a bad week,
Right.
and it will all of a sudden make you bipolar.
I know
because
that.
you're
You're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right about that. That's very bad, dangerous kinds of diagnosis stuff. You're absolutely right about that.
So a person that goes from being happy to mad, like snapping, like,
And maybe
is that considered a polar?
not necessarily.
I know
How
a
about if,
two-year-old
what if,
like
what if
that.
you were happy and I
He's
just told you
pretty
that
angry.
your house just blew up and burnt down and your dog was inside and now you're very mad and upset? Does that mean you're bipolar? It means you had a normal change. You see what I'm saying? And other things can cause change also. Guys, we got to be careful with this stuff. There are lots of reasons. That's why that state trait thing is such an important thing. When you see even changes here, could it be state stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, you can be in a damn great mood, wake up, what a day, and within a half hour you're madder than hell. Does that mean you got bipolar, or does it mean now the day started to suck pretty fast? You see what I'm saying with that kind of stuff? So you got to be careful with this stuff, you guys. And that point, like with this cyclothymia, if the right person catches that person here instead of here, the next thing you know, you got depression, you got bipolar or something like that. That's not necessarily the case. Does that make sense?
So would you say that those two are pretty less known because they're probably not diagnosed very often because they probably, for the most part, just present as somewhat moody individuals?
Yes. And
so
guess
no
what
one
else?
cares.
Guess what else? I don't make as much money off it either.
Oh, true.
You see what I'm saying?
Because I don't get to give you drugs.
You need to be good and sick for me to make that insurance claim. You see what I'm saying with that? And that's the point of that stuff, you guys. You got to remember that kind of stuff.
I'm pretty sick.
You see what I'm saying? So understanding it. State trait. Everybody cool with that? Don't forget, what were two biggies? What were two biggies? Hypochondriasis. Know what that is? Agoraphobia. Know what that is? Hypochondriasis, agoraphobia. Know what those things are?
I remember talking about them.
That eternal search for non-solution. Remember, that's the patient. They're worried about this. They're worried about that. Oh no, I'm dying. Look at this.
Psychochondriasis. Do we need to know psychochondriasis?
Don't forget, hypochondriasis was that concern over, oh no this, oh no that. What was the difference between a person who's worried about their health, maybe too worried about their health, but still worried about their health, and a hypochondriasis situation? What would be the big thing, the big difference?
If you tell the person who's worried about their health that they're not sick, they're kind of thankful. And if you tell the hypochondriasis patient, they tell you you're a moron asshole.
That's right, exactly. That's right, exactly. I don't want to hear that because that's going to undermine my very life. The energy I'm using.
I'm telling you, she's
stuff
like.
I don't want to worry about. Remember that woman, you guys. That woman. It was easier for her to think she was dying of cancer than to deal with turning 40.
Mm-hmm.
What? Say him.
Pardon me?
Say him, so we can.
Hypochondriasis.
I think I got that. I'll tell him.
And then with it, another one of your lunatic teachers, conceptual neologisms. Oh, by the way, what's a neologism?
It's a made-up word.
Made up thing.
I love that.
And so, yeah, your lunatic teacher's neologism here. What? Psychochondriasis. What was that? Instead of worried about some physical ailment, oh, what mental ailment do I have? Oh no, oh no.
The thing is that that's brilliant, actually. And even though it's made up word, and it should be somewhere, like somebody should know about
You guys
that.
should be very, very aware of that.
That's
What did we say with psychochondriasis? When does that start to peak its head? Yes.
So does the phobia go with these two?
Agoraphobia?
Agoraphobia, what was that?
fear of the fear.
Is that
The fear of fear. Again, this person, it's not just fear of open spaces, it's not just, this person, basically what it is, they avoid open spaces, they avoid crowded places because they
That's me.
they know they're going to have this awful thing happen. And this sense of this impending terrible thing's going to happen and I'm going to have no way out.
So the fear of going to a doctor, which could go with the hypochondriasis.
Well, no, that wouldn't be hypochondriasis.
Do they want to go
But
to
it could lead to it, right?
Well, no, the hypochondriasis person is going to be going to the doctor all the time. They need to have doctors.
That's exactly where it's, that's the root word, yeah.
So you couldn't have them both at the same time.
Pardon me?
You couldn't be both at the same time.
Yeah, what? Both what?
Like hypochondriasis, sense of something bad inside of me, but fear of going to the doctor to find out that I have something bad with me.
No, I'm not afraid of going to the doctor to find out I got something bad. Hypochondriasis is I'm going to the doctor so the doctor will tell me I got something bad.
That's one to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to.
Yeah.
Psycho is mental.
I'm going to the doctor one after another after another.
The hypo.
Okay.
Not to get drugs, not to, but I need that doctor to validate because guys, once again, this woman, her ability to worry and worry and worry and worry and worry and worry about cancer meant she burned up all the energy she was using to worry about turning 40. A doctor comes along and says, you don't got cancer, there goes that, now I got to worry about turning 40 again. Does that make sense? You see how that works? And so they're going to invest all kinds of time and energy in their illness. So hypochondriasis, agoraphobia. Know those personality disorders. If I say borderline personality disorder, what would you say? Fear of abandonment, impulse control. Those can, remember, hey, if I say histrionic, what? Over dramatic, center of attention. Pardon me?
Over dramatic?
That's what is that?
Yeah.
Histrionic. That histrionic thing.
That's where we get hysterical from, right?
Histrionic. If I say once again, fear of abandonment, very impulsive, dangerous behaviors.
Dependent personality.
That's borderline.
That'd be borderline. Hey, how about this? I'm calling you up at 4 o'clock in the morning to ask you what shoes to wear to the interview, and you better happily, lovingly be awoken at that point and tell me.
Fine.
Which one's that?
Dependent.
Dependent personality.
I tried it.
Dependent. You seem to be familiar with that one.
Yeah.
And you see. Do you
I thought so, like
have that? Or not you, but you have that in your life. You
yeah.
know what that is? Uh huh.